Good morning, everyone, or afternoon. Today I'm going to talk about a topic that is really difficult for students who have learning disabilities and or attention deficit disorder, or, just for the average American. But writing can be one of the most difficult things that we do. And for a child with a disability, a learning disability, or ADHD, or a language learning disability, writing can be a very significant struggle. So let's talk about why writing is such a struggle for students with these disabilities. Now, it is rare for someone with ADHD not to have some degree of difficulty with writing. So children and teens with ADHD are often verbal and knowledgeable, but they're unable to communicate and get what they want to say down on paper, which is a very difficult process, and it is a process. So there are a number of things that go into the writing process that becomes a struggle with children with disabilities, language and learning disabilities, and ADHD. So let's talk about planning and organization as the first one. So writing requires us being able to generate, plan, and organize our thoughts and ideas. I'm going to say that again, as I always do. What's the important thing? We have to be able to generate, plan, and organize our ideas in our head. This stage of the writing process is often the most challenging and neglected, especially for those who are experiencing difficulties with written expression. So when given a written assignment, students with ADHD often get stuck right here. They get stuck. They do not know what to write about, how to organize it, how to put it in an outline form, how to begin, or how to narrow down and focus on a topic that will be motivating to write about. And I've tested a lot of kids, and I've even given them written prompts to try to write a story about this picture, and nothing. They can't think of anything. They can think of maybe a few lines. They sometimes can even think of a whole story, but it's disorganized, it's rambling. It's like thinking about one thing here. Oh, let me go back here. I forgot about this. And it's just going back and forth. The next thing that they have problems with is memory. Kids with ADHD have problems with memory. It's just a fact. Working memory is necessary in order to juggle the many different thoughts that you have to transcribe any of your ideas onto paper. It involves keeping ideas in your mind enough to remember what you want to say. It requires maintaining focus and your train of thought. So the flow of the writing won't ever veer off course, like I was saying earlier. Okay, we've gone totally off the idea of cats, and now we're talking about dogs. The process also requires retrieval of assorted information from your long-term memory, for example, facts, experiences, to share about the writing topic. It also requires to recall the vocabulary words. You got to think about spelling. You got to think about mechanics. You got to think about grammar. All those things go into the writing process. And I often say to parents, writing is one of the most difficult things that a student will ever do. Now you have to think about language. Writing requires the ability to express our thoughts in a logical and coherent manner. It requires us to think about things in an organized manner. We have to utilize descriptive sentences while maintaining proper sentence and paragraph structure. That's hard. That's very difficult. We also need fluidity of expressive language and facility with vocabulary usage. We got to know that vocabulary. We got to be able to use it fluidly. We got to have an automaticity to it. Then we've got to think about spelling. So people with attention deficit problems are inattentive to visual details and do not notice or recall the letters, sequence, or visual patterns within words. So that can be a problem when you're writing, especially when you're in the mechanical part of writing. They're prone to making many careless mistakes because guess what? Many of them aren't going to go back and check to make sure that a word was spelled right, that sentence is not a run-on. They're just not going to do it. You have to remind them to go back and to check. They tend to have a tendency to be impulsive and want to hurry up and get finished with the task. Those who have learning difficulties are typically weak in spelling because auditory and sequential memory deficits causing great difficulty learning that letter sound coordination, as well as hearing and remembering and writing those sounds in the correct order is problematic. Visual and sequential memory, causing them difficulty recalling the way a word looks and getting it down to the correct order and sequence. I know I don't have a learning disability, but I used to have a problem with the word answer. And there are many words in our language that have problems that are problematic like that. Answer sounds like A-N-S-E-R, but you've got that W in there to throw you off every single time. And that's a common word that kids with disabilities misspell. Let's talk about the grapho motor skills. Many children with ADHD and learning disabilities have impairments in grapho motor skills. And this affects the physical task of writing and organizing print on the page. Okay, they have trouble with that, organizing that on the page. Writing neatly or within the given lines is very problematic. Spacing, organizing their writing on the page is very problematic. If you give them a piece of paper that doesn't have lines on it, you can really easily see how those graphomotor skills come into play and how they're not able to do that. Copying from the board or book onto paper is tedious for them. And it's tedious for a teacher also looking on if they're able to grasp that. Because I test kids, I'm able to see that. It's like looking up, looking down. It's like one word at a time, one letter at a time, and it can be very, very, very frustrating. With fine motor skills, they have causing the act of handwriting to be inefficient, fatiguing, and frustrating. It affects their pencil grip in a funny way. They have problems with pressure. And then we're not going to talk about even just understanding what it is that they wrote. Sometimes I have no clue what it is that they wrote. I usually have to have them go back and read it to me so I can make sure that I understand what it is that they wrote before I even can start, looking at what problems it is that they're having in the first place. A lot of times I recommend that those kids that have those significant graphomotor skills, that they learn keyboarding skills really quickly in their educational community, their educational life, because those skills are going to be needed down the line. They don't teach keyboarding the way they used to when I was in school. You basically have to pretty much teach it yourself. You learn how to type or you learn how to point and click, okay? Executing print or cursive with precision or speed. I have kids that don't even know how to write in cursive these days. You ask them to write their name in cursive, they have no idea. They end up printing it or writing it in block letters. Kids with ADHD or learning disabilities have problems with editing. significant difficulty during the revision and proofreading process. Stage of the writing process. It just becomes very difficult for them. And many students with ADHD go directly to the initial draft and the final draft without even making any revisions. Like I was saying earlier, they don't. They have that they're impulsive and they just don't want. They don't have that time or that need to go back and look over their paper because it's so tedious and requires so much mental energy. Students with ADHD have problems with self-monitoring. Fluent writing requires thinking and planning ahead. That's the definition of one of the problems with ADHD is thinking and planning ahead. They have problems with keeping the intended audience in mind and writing to that audience with a clear purpose. You need to know who you're talking to when you're writing. It's like, just like you know who you're talking to when you're talking. You have to know who your audience is. I'm not going to talk the same way to another group of speech therapists or educational diagnosticians or teachers in the same way that I am going to talk to a group of parents. It's just that simple. There's a different set of words, a different language, a different vocabulary. It's not going to be as detailed just because that vocabulary may not be vocabulary that they have been exposed to. Following and referring back to the specific structure of a writing genre, such as steps of a complete paragraph, narrative account, persuasive essay, friendly letter, they're not going to remember what the aspects of that particular genre is. Knowing how to read one's own work critically in order to make revisions and develop ideas thoroughly. So going back and even looking at your writing, the process of looking at your own writing and being critical about your own writing is going to be difficult for them because they're not going to be able to see their mistakes. They're not going to be able to know how to revise. They're not going to be able to know how to say something differently than they've said it before. So they also have problems with speed of writing and output production. So it may take them forever to get a writing assignment completed. So they're going to need extra time for writing assignments. So some students with ADHD, they rush through the writing assignments really fast, often leading to illegible handwriting with careless errors. Others with ADHD write excruciatingly slow. Although they know the answers and can verbally express their thoughts and ideas, they are unable to put more than a few words or sentences on paper. Needless to say, this is extremely frustrating for everyone involved. Part of the problem with speed of output may be due to impairments and impulsivity and inhibition, what we talked about earlier. It may be difficulty sustaining that attention to task and maintaining that mental energy, that good mental energy to keep going, required in written expression. Or it may be those grapho motor dysfunction difficulties that we talked about. It's just hard for them to grasp the pencil or the paper and write legibly and look up at the board and get all the information and write it down. Sometimes kids with those problems need occupational therapy or physical therapy to get those skills down so they can become more efficient, more successful writers. So there are lots of things that you can do to help your child or your students with writing. If you have any questions, you can get on our website at www.pryorandassociates.com, or you can get on some of the websites that are online, like www.understood.org. There are a number of resources that you can look up with additional ideas on how to help your children with written expression. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up and please subscribe. Thanks a lot and have a great day.